here. Back with me on my panel, former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider, and historian and New Culture Forum fellow Rafe Heydel-Mankoo. Rafe, we've discussed immigration before. Surely the government can't go on saying it will happen next week.
They've had 13 years, and all we get are dead cats on the table in the form of Bibi Stockholm with a paltry 500. All of this is done in the dying embers of the Conservative government, if I dare say, to try to get headlines in order to convince the public. Well, I think the Conservative government should actually be Conservative for once in a long time. It's betrayed every manifesto pledge it's made since the last 13 years on this issue. But one of the reasons that numbers are down across the channel this year, of course, is because the weather's been so bad. And I think it's quite insulting for the Prime Minister to say that his plan is working when we've had 73,000 asylum applications in the year to March of last year, a 33% increase on the year before that. When we have 50,000 migrants in hotels in this country at the peak of summer, decimating local economies, and there are 170,000 applications in the backlog.
But all of this is true and concerning, but you're a constitutionalist. The government can't just ignore the law and the legal process, can it?
No, but why is it taking months and years to process these applications? And why is the acceptance rate 74%? That's a scandal that the media need to pay more attention to. Why are 74% of applications being accepted? The problem with all of this is that the government and the Prime Minister and previous governments are focusing on the consequences of illegal migration rather than on the causes. A French politician last year said, if you want to stop them coming, make Britain less attractive than France. Our message must be, stay in France, stay in Germany, don't come here.
What would you do, if anything? Would you make it easier for people to come? Would you create new routes? Are you not worried about the numbers? And how do you feel voters' concerns can be best addressed?
So, first of all, the reason why we have such a large backlog of people who are claiming asylum is because they aren't being processed. There have been cuts in the Home Office, there's not enough money spent on legal support, on interpreters, on translators. If you were really interested in processing people's cases so you could see what support and help that they needed, that's where you'd put the money, not in the dead cats, as Rafe says, or as I would call it, a kind of cruel theatre to show that you're doing something tough when really it doesn't help anybody and it's quite cruel. Now, we don't have any safe routes for people to come to this country unless you're Ukrainian or you're from Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. So that is a huge problem. You can be someone from Afghanistan who has been supporting some British organisation in the many, many years that we were occupying their country in a failed occupation. And there's no legal way, there's no safe way for you to get here. So, yes, I would have a processing safe site in Calais, but also in other major transit centres like Istanbul, Agadez, Tripoli, where we can assess the cases there. Rather, if you want to do the people who are organising the small boats out of business, there needs to be an alternative route for people to get here who have a right to asylum. And the right to asylum is an absolute right. If you're under threat,
yes,
you have a right to claim asylum in
the first safe country.
And there are completely understandable reasons why people who have some connection to Britain want to come to Britain.
But we're
Take the Afghan
the first
example.
safe country. Though I accept your point on the Afghanis who have worked for Britain. But there are potentially hundreds of millions who have a reason to want to leave the country that they're in.
Yes.
Even if that's the international agreement, we cannot cope with that.
This is why it is clearly a much larger question than Britain alone. You know, there are 110 million people who are displaced around the world now, and that number is going to go up and go up a lot. The idea that this so-called crisis is going to go away is completely for the birds when you look at the breakdown in agriculture in large parts of the world. So what's really required, of what a serious government would do, would seek a negotiated situation with other countries for how many people, under what circumstances each country would take, and then do that in the most humane possible way possible. What we're seeing now is not humane, and it isn't working.
But when you're talking about over 100 million people, even if you have an agreement with lots of other countries, the numbers are simply not containable for the rich countries of the world. There have to be local domestic solutions.
Exactly, precisely. There have to be solutions made by neighbours, and that's one of the issues which is never being investigated properly by our governments. it always seems to be Europe that's taking in far more than its share. I mean, yes,
the overwhelming majority of displaced people are displaced either within their country or in neighbouring countries.
If we want to discourage people...
If you go to refugee camps, they are...
We need to create a genuinely hostile environment if we want to ensure that we...
No, we absolutely...
The hostile environment was a disaster.
That wasn't a hostile environment, though. That's the problem.
That is not the kind of people we should be. That's not the kind of country we should be. We should not be creating a hostile environment.
Only a hostile environment will discourage economic migrants from coming over here.
A hostile environment for anybody. That is cruel and it's unnecessary.
It's the only thing that will work.
Astonishment, I'm agreeing more with James than with Rafe, which is novel for my general political outlook and probably for James's as well. Anyway, thank you to my panel.